Hello and welcome to another episode of Bright Guy and Super Friends. I'm your host Brian Labick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Bradley and Ian Leidick. They don't get to introduce themselves this time because I realized while editing we never did a new intro for this episode. So for anyone that likes the cold opens and guest introductions, I'm sorry, but I did not plan well enough to take the time to include them in this episode. So if you're already confused, I'll try to catch you up to speed, I guess. Last week, we planned to record a news episode. I was aiming to talk about some quick hit headline stuff, and then some Microsoft and Sony news, covering all of that hopefully in about an hour. Well, when we were done recording, it came out to about 2 hours, and as I was editing last weekend, it seemed very likely that Sony was going to have some announcements that could actually coincide with some of the stuff that we discussed in that episode. So I decided to split the recording, delay the other half a week to see if Sony was going to announce what they wanted to announce, and put out the quick hit stuff first just to put something out. So that's what we did. We did the quick hit stuff last week, caught up on like 3 months worth of news that we hadn't really talked about. And then the part you get this week is the back half where we talked about the Microsoft and Sony, where they keep buying up and acquiring video game developers, and some of them are pretty big if you haven't paid attention. So I got Mike and Ian back to record a new bit about the PlayStation's new subscription service plan that they talked about. That was the announcement I was waiting to see. There was rumblings that they were going to announce some stuff. That seemed to be the most likely. We actually kind of discussed a little bit of the I guess if there was a possibility of them doing that when we talked about the acquisitions, and sure enough, it ended up coinciding with what we talked about. So I wanted to get them back and just kind of put this at the end. So there's a new bit at the end for what we recorded on that announcement and some updates for that. But I mean, all of this really is just a long-winded excuse as to why there's no intro at the top, because I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants trying to put some of this together, and there's just one thing we didn't really have time for, and I completely kind of forgot about. So this is what you get. You get me instead. Couple other just housekeeping things. The bit that we recorded for the Microsoft and Sony acquisitions, you might hear some like crackling in some of the audio, mainly I think when Mike talks. There were some issues with his specific audio, so there's certain places where it just starts to crackle when he's talking, and I couldn't really figure out what was going on or what was happening. I tried my best to edit it out, but it came down to either cutting out what he said or leave it in and just kind of deal with the crackling. So I apologize for the shittiness of some of the audio, but I did what I could. We're kind of just stuck with it right now. I've also, I guess speaking of Sony rumors too, I've also heard there's another big rumor for another big Sony acquisition that might happen, which might actually seem particularly interesting to Mike, I guess, if this pans out. But I was seeing it floating around the internet around April Fools, so I'm a little unsure how much weight I want to put in that. But I'm sure, by the time this episode's released, I would be surprised if something official is announced shortly afterwards, because right when I think we're on top of the news, we immediately get outdated by something else. So that's just kind of the way the cycle works. I thought we were on top of things, jumping back in and talking about the subscription service stuff, but I don't know. We'll see. Fingers crossed. We might come back and record something on it. We'll see. At the very least, I will definitely post something about it when it happens. I don't want to mention what it is, because I try really hard to be the person to give you factual information. I hate communicating and commenting on rumors, because we've done stuff like that in the past, and it seems like whenever we talk about a topic that might happen, it turns out it doesn't happen, and then I feel like in a way that I've led you guys on to something like that sounds either really cool, and then get everybody's hopes up, and then just dash them because we never hear about it again. So I try to make this a place where you guys can listen to the news stuff we cover that have all been officially announced somewhere, so there's no confusion about what's going on. Now, I guess some of the stuff we still get burned for. If some official announcements fall apart, things get canceled, dates change, but I do my best to try to keep on top of it for you guys. So if we don't talk about it on the show or give you an update on the show, I try to make sure I make it a point to post that update on our socials. So feel free to, when I talk about all the links and stuff like that, Facebook, Twitter, and stuff, those are the places to go to hopefully get the updates when we see them. But all right, so you've heard from me long enough, or at least me solo. You're going to hear from me more later. So I'll get into the episode. When I throw it to our past selves here, we're just going to end up hitting the ground running because this is all, pre-recorded stuff. So here we go. What we recorded before the Sony Microsoft acquisitions. There's a little bit at the end that was new that we did for the PlayStation subscription tiers. All of that is coming up in this episode. Enjoy. All right, so Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard. So the big stuff. Happened a few months ago. We never talked about it. This is apparently how big gaming companies operate now. So Microsoft and Sony beginning to consolidate studios under their umbrella. And not just smaller studios. These are some big name developers. So we did talk about how Microsoft surprised everyone by acquiring Bethesda. At the time, that was a huge deal. They bought ZeniMax Media, which is the parent company of Bethesda Softworks, for $7.5 billion. And then on January 18th, 2022, Microsoft announced it was acquiring Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion. This would put Microsoft in charge of Activision Publishing, Blizzard Entertainment, Beenox, Demonware, Digital Legends, High Moon Studios, Infinity Ward, King, Major League Gaming, Radical Entertainment, Raven Software, Sledgehammer Games, Toys for Bobs, and Treyarch. Gives them access to franchises like Call of Duty, Warcraft, Candy Crush, Tony Hawk, Diablo, Overwatch, Spyro, Hearthstone, Guitar Hero, Crash Bandicoot, and StarCraft. So, for anyone following the news, Activision Blizzard came under fire over the last year for multiple scandals, including labor protests from Call of Duty developers, a lawsuit against them for creating a quote-unquote constant sexual harassment workplace culture. And in November of 2021, the Wall Street Journal published an article of how CEO Bobby Kotick not only knew about these problems of workplace culture, but that he himself was accused of mistreatment and harassment by women. So the company was not looking very good. According to The Verge, CEO of Microsoft Gaming Phil Spencer sent a company-wide email to Xbox staff 2 days after the Wall Street Journal article, saying that he was disturbed and deeply troubled by the horrific events and actions at Activision Blizzard and is evaluating all aspects of our relationship with Activision Blizzard and making ongoing proactive adjustments. The next day, Phil Spencer talked to Bobby Kotick. According to the article, their conversation was around a different topic, but eventually veered into strategic opportunities between the two companies. And the next day, both men joined a call with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, and that's when Microsoft began talking about acquiring Activision Blizzard. In the same article from The Verge, they detailed that Activision Blizzard's SEC filing of the merger, and they say that there were 4 other unnamed companies and 1 unnamed individual all looking to buy Activision Blizzard. So they don't name who any of these people are, what the other companies are, but there was other interest. It also says that if the FTC blocks the deal, and when all is said and done, we're still waiting for a year for this deal to go through. It has to go through all the proper channels, courts, and all that stuff. If it is blocked by the FTC, Microsoft has to pay Activision Blizzard $2 to $3 billion. If Activision Blizzard shareholders block the deal, they would have to pay Microsoft $2.27 billion. It's still early. The deal won't be finalized for at least another year, so there's plenty of time for this deal to hit some roadblocks. With the merger, many people are calling for Bobby Kotick's resignation. The Activision Blizzard press release has said that Bobby Kotick will continue to serve as CEO, but once the deal is done, all Activision Blizzard business will report to Phil Spencer. So I would think it's pretty clear that he's leaving. Bobby Kotick is leaving once the deal is done. But as the Verge article reports, he will not be leaving with his tail between his legs. He has about 4.3 million shares in Activision Blizzard stock, and at the time of the article, his shares were worth $410 million. And if he decides to stay after the deal is done, and Microsoft has to force him out, he has a golden parachute worth $14.5 million. So he is not going empty-handed. That's the info I have for that deal. We could talk about that for a little bit, or I can go to the Sony Bungie stuff, and then we could loop back around for both of them. I don't know if you guys have a preference.
Let's do Bungie real quick.
Okay. All right, so Sony and Bungie. Not to be outdone, about 2 weeks later, after Microsoft announced it was buying Activision Blizzard, Sony announced that it was buying former Microsoft studio Bungie. Bungie is the original creator of Halo, has since moved on to create Destiny. After Halo 3 released in September of 2007, Bungie had announced that they were separating from Microsoft in October of 2007 to become their own company.
Forgot the part where they were a Macintosh developer.
Yeah, I didn't go back that far. I did miss that step. But when they split from Microsoft in October 2007 to become their own company, Microsoft would retain the rights to Halo. Bungie continued to work on the Halo franchise and released Halo ODST in September 2009, and then Halo Reach in September 2010. However, that same year in 2010, back in April of 2010, before Halo Reach released, Bungie announced that they were entering a 10-year publishing agreement with Activision Blizzard. Following Reach's release, Bungie finally separated from Microsoft to begin work on their new IP, which turned out to be Destiny. Microsoft continued to make Halo games with some of the people from Bungie that decided to stay. They formed their own studio, which became 343 Industries. Over Destiny's development cycle, Bungie and Activision struggled to see eye to eye on how and when how much content should be released. Activision loves their annual releases and saw Destiny as something that could be mined for years. Bungie saw Destiny as a ever-evolving game, but Activision continued to push expansions.
Release every year.
Activision continued to push expansions, updates, sequels. Eventually, in January of 2019, Bungie and Activision said they were parting ways, but this time Bungie retains the rights to their new IP, meaning that they became the sole in control of Destiny. They continued to self-publish the game. Any additional content drops between then and January. They self-published the game with any additional releases and content drops on January 31st. This year, 2022, Bungie and Sony released a statement that Sony was buying Bungie for $3.6 billion. And before you wonder what happens to Destiny, both companies stressed that Bungie will continue to be a multi-platform and independent studio and publisher. So if you are playing Destiny on anything other than a PlayStation, you will still be able to play Destiny on everything other than a PlayStation. Even the Google
Destiny
Stadia,
3.
if you want to.
I was going to say for now. Because I feel like Microsoft said the same thing at first about the Bethesda titles. Like, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. Now they're like,
Microsoft
exclusive.
was very clear that they would honor current publishing agreements, which is the exact same terminology they used when they bought Activision.
Right.
We will honor current publishing agreements.
Yeah.
They made no promises to release Bethesda games in the future on multiple platforms.
And this is something I think that has to be clear for everybody. They did not spend nearly $70 billion buying Blizzard and Activision to be like, yeah, we'll release them everywhere. Don't buy into Game Pass because you can buy it on PlayStation. This shit is just corporate bureaucracy talk that as soon as they're able to make it exclusive, they will.
But do they have to? Like, I think that's part of the conversation, is I don't think they have to.
Why would
I think they could I think Microsoft could still make money.
They want you subscribed. They want
right,
all those people that would just buy it.
It's cheaper. It's cheaper to just subscribe to that than buying the $70 game.
Right.
But if you don't offer another option,
but
are people going to stop playing Call of Duty, or are they just going to do it on Xbox instead?
But again, Microsoft has continually said they don't give a shit what console you play on, what device you play on. They just want you to play their games. So even if that audience is PlayStation, I don't see there's any reason why they wouldn't release the highest selling first-person shooter franchise ever not on PlayStation. Like,
I think they're done. I think it's 3 games, I think was what people were saying, that Sony has like an agreement with Activision for 3 more Call of Duty games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think at that point it's it. Obviously, they're already, without Microsoft being in charge, Activision's already announced they're skipping for the first time in 17 years a yearly COD release.
I looked at that.
Which is a good thing.
Call of Duty has started in way back in, what was the year that I saw? 2003. 2003.
Yeah,
October 2003. Since then, there has been a Call of Duty release every year since 2003. This is the first.
That is
like,
insane.
Granted, we're getting a Call of Duty release this year. They've already
just
confirmed
not next
Modern
year.
Warfare 2 is happening this year.
Because Vanguard sucks.
So whatever the next Black Ops is won't be until 2024.
Right. So from Modern
Or
Warfare 2, probably
whatever
this fall,
Treyarch
we're
makes.
getting a 2-year gap between Call of Duty titles, which is the first time that has ever happened in the release schedule of Call of Duty.
Which really, like, I'm happy for it and I'm upset by it because Treyarch's Call of Duty are my personal favorites. So it's like, all right, we're not getting one next year, but the one we get the following year will be even better. So
Ideally, yes, more time to develop. Like, the development cycle for these games, like, they have enough studios working on Call of Duty that they can release them every year and still have a little bit of break for certain studios. Like, they like you said, they passed the torch. Infinity Ward Treyarch, Infinity Ward, Treyarch. Sometimes they put
it's
Sledgehammer
Sledgehammer,
games
yeah.
and
Well,
High
that's
Moon
the
and
thing,
stuff
though.
in there. And
It started off alternating between those two. Then they threw Sledgehammer in. Then I forget which Sledgehammer game did really bad, and they're
Ghosts.
like, "Yeah,
Ghosts?
you're getting probably you're
Yeah.
getting skipped, Buster Boy." And then Vanguard came out, which was the lowest selling Call of Duty game I think, of
Sledgehammer.
all time, or since
They
Ghost.
just need to take a giant boot to
So,
Sledgehammer
but that's
and be
the
like,
other
bye.
issue, though, is Activision as a whole basically just all of the studios at Activision basically became COD support studios.
Yep.
yeah,
Like
Well,
they
isn't
basically
it, what is it, Raven?
built the company's built
Does
around an
Modern
annual
Warfare,
Call of Duty
or does
release.
Warzone? Like they
What?
set up Raven to do
Yeah.
to do Warzone, which is they're also talking about Warzone 2 coming out later this year, right?
That's what I think is going to happen, and I think no matter what,
Like Warzone
whenever
2
that
and
happens,
Modern Warfare 2 are going to kind of coincide.
I think it'll be somewhere in the release cycle of Modern Warfare 2. I don't know if they've said if it's the same day that Modern Warfare 2 releases.
No,
like,
I don't
you
think
know,
it will be, because I don't think
Okay.
they want them to compete. I think
No,
they're going to
yeah,
want
'cause-
one or the other, like probably Modern Warfare 2 to come out first, let people get in, play it, level up, get their guns leveled up, get all that stuff ready, and then just the same way they did with Vanguard and Caldera, even though both of those are a complete shit show, you know, you throw Modern Warfare 2 out, and then 2-3 months later Warzone 2, and you just keep the hype train going. So you've got the
Yeah,
hype for
'cause
Modern
when-
Warfare 2, and then you get the hype to kick back up again.
when the first Modern Warfare released, like Modern Warfare came out in the fall of
Yeah.
whatever year that was, 2019, and then
Yep.
Warzone released in like March of 2020. So there was a good 4 to 5 month gap somewhere in there between the games. I would expect that for Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2.
And this is something that, like, I personally am a fan of, like, the Call of Duty, like, pro esports. My hope is that with a longer development cycle and with Microsoft in charge and wanting to push this, maybe, that we get a better esports scene for all titles involved. Because Blizzard has a couple in there as well that are obviously potential esports titles, even if Overwatch
also
2 isn't
kinda
particularly well
funny
thought
that
of yet.
Microsoft and Sony both now own like an esports company.
Which one?
Sony bought Evo during the pandemic. It does the fighting
Oh, I didn't
games.
even hear about that.
I
And
think
now Microsoft has MLG. It was not like a huge announcement, and it was, it's just Evo. It's
Yeah,
not-
I feel like
it's
I
not
caught it
MLG.
somewhere, but
it's
didn't
big,
realize
but
what
if
it
you don't care
was.
about fighting games,
Yeah.
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 But-
So Sony owns that, so I think that's cool. And then I guess with the Activision thing, so Jeff Grubb of VentureBeat was talking about this. In retrospect, he heard that Bobby Kotick was like working through Christmas, and same with I think Phil Spencer, and he was like, "That's weird because I've never heard that about them before." And now he's like, "Oh, this is why. This is what was happening."
Yeah.
And I do think that like these talks obviously have been going on for a long time, but at the same time, everyone's talking to everyone. Everyone's up for sale. It's just finding that right price point for both companies to agree on. And I do think without the current Activision scandal that lowered the stock price and got it closer to Microsoft's number, this deal doesn't happen. And
Oh,
now
yeah,
I don't know,
I agree.
think Brian said this specifically, but since this deal's in this pre-buy phase, legally Microsoft cannot dictate to Activision anything about their business. So they can't say Kotick will be fired. They can't say fired Bobby Kotick. They can't say
Right.
any of that legally.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is it probably going to happen? Yeah, I doubt he stays on afterwards. And
I
even
mean-
if he didn't have his parachute in his stock, someone's going to hire him as a consultant like 2
Yeah.
weeks later when he gets back from Belize.
Yeah.
As shitty as he is or is supposed to be, if everything is true.
Well, he's shitty even without that
What-
for
yeah,
his
right.
his bad business practices.
I
Even
agree.
without the awful sexual harassment scandals.
Yeah.
True.
He's already a shit
So-
person.
So, but whatever
And
the
he's
case,
a millionaire, so he's like pretty shitty too for that.
he's not going to have a tough life after this. So people that
No.
might
No.
cheer when Microsoft's like, "Oh, we fired Bobby Kotick," it's like, listen, dude, like he's perfectly fucking fine.
Yeah.
Like you can forget about just the money the dude has in the bank without any of the shit they might give him is enough to live 10,000 lifetimes for anybody else.
I'm really just kind of hoping he leaves Activision Blizzard and just doesn't work for a game studio. Like, work somewhere else, fine. Just don't be in
Why
charge of
not?
it.
It's going to
Tencent.
be really tough for a game studio to pull off the PR of hiring him.
Right.
No, that's what he'll be a consultant, and they'll get hired the consultancy, and you won't know because the consultant's private company or it'll be 10 cents. And what are you going to do about 10 cents? Nothing.
Or he just takes the money and doesn't care about like the amount of money he's going to be able to go away with.
Yeah, but guys
Just
like
retire.
him always want to make more. It's a high score. That's what it's all.
I know.
really about.
I understand. I'm just
It's
saying.
not even
like,
about spending.
I think
it.
about
It's just
myself,
can
and
I
I'm like,
get
you
the
give
most
me like
monies?
1/10 of that money, and I'm like, all right, I'm good. You'll never see me again. Like it's
So as far as the deal, good for Microsoft, good for Activision Blizzard. Neither. What do you guys think?
I'm concerned how seriously Microsoft is going to try and sweep under the rugs these allegations. Are they going to perform sweeping changes that the Blizzard walkouts, the unionization efforts of Ravensoft? Are they going to just guys cut that shit out? Codec's gone, cut it out. Or are they going to try and improve meaningful changes, not even just at Activision Blizzard, but all their studios? There's I don't think, recent news about issues at Microsoft studios. No one's really complained. We haven't heard any negative things about Bethesda really since being bought, other than they keep making Skyrim. So, I'm curious what it's going to be. There's probably going to be a big hiring spree just because we're literally talking about Activision is just a company comprised of COD support studios. So I'm really curious what they do with some of these licenses. And like, they brought home Geometry Wars. It's back as a Microsoft title. They own it again. Like, are they gonna make like another Guitar Hero? Like, is that a thing that's possible?
I feel like
It's
it's a
like-
franchise
I mean,
that
if
could come back.
Harmonix is with Epic and now Activision's here, like, how does that work?
What? Harmonix never owned Guitar Hero.
Oh, so it's Activision that owns the rights.
Yeah, that's why Harmonix made Rock Band after they left.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right.
You got King's Quest. You got DJ Hero. And I think the weirdest part, which Brian mentioned, we didn't touch on, they own King now. Guys, remember King? They still make Candy Crush, which is like a top 5 game to this day, like on daily sales. They bought that too. Like, hey, like, holy.
Well, that's one of
I
those
didn't
things
even
that,
realize
like,
that.
I mean, like, financially, that's one of the reasons it makes sense, is because of Candy Crush. It's not something I've ever played or given a shit about, but in terms of money, it's a gold mine.
Did you guys remember Prototype? They own that now.
I remember Prototype, but
I didn't realize that was an Activision game. I think in my mind that was always a Sony game for some reason.
That's
mean,
because I think
I think I'm thinking of
really similar to
Infamous. I'm
yeah, no,
crossing
that's
over
what I'm saying,
with
because it's
Infamous.
very similar to Infamous, which
Yeah.
came out like the same time. So I'm kind of excited about this deal to see what Microsoft does with it. I'm excited for Warzone 2 because I think they'll get it right this time and not promise to add 40 fucking guns to the game every year.
yeah, right. What are you talking? That's what sells shit. That's how it makes so much money.
No, but there's so many other free-to-play battle royales that make a shit ton of money.
More than
There's
Warzone?
one called Fortnite that doesn't have to do that.
One.
And they basically funded the earlier news story of Epic buying Bandcamp.
I understand that, but you're talking about one title that's competing.
Oh, I mean, Apex makes a shit ton.
But are they on Warzone levels? Because Warzone makes billions.
I don't know the financials for that. I don't know I don't know if EA's released that. But I mean,
Well, what I guess the point I'm making is like Fortnite and Warzone are subsisting off of the same format of selling microtransactions.
but Warzone doesn't need to have 270 guns to sell you stuff, is my point.
They do. That's their business model now. I'm hoping it changes.
I'm just saying you can just sell skins for like 40 guns. Or 70 guns, not a new 50 every year. That's the issue.
I agree, but
And
I'm
I
not
don't
saying
think they need to do that going forward. And I think that's the biggest issue with the game is like the meta doesn't change because of something fun. It changes because go buy the new $70 Call of Duty real quick because you got to level up these guns to be competitive. Because we're not going to fix the fucking broken guns until you had them for 2 weeks.
right,
Like,
and
that was
that's
the whole
why I
problem
stopped
with the
playing
DMR and
it-
Black Ops.
And I'm hoping that's what they do. And I'm hoping that they change, like you're saying, and they go to a much less predatory practice. Whether that happens by Warzone 2 or not, I don't know, because Microsoft won't own this by then.
No, but they'll own them by the time Black Ops comes out, I think.
By the time the next
with
Black
that being
Ops comes
delayed.
out, yes, but not by the time
So, I mean,
Warzone
unless
2
if
comes out.
Warzone 2 is preloading in the first 500 fucking guns from Warzone 1, who gives a shit? Why are we doing this? Just like
Oh no, I'm not
fuck
saying
it, who
it'll preload
cares?
those guns in, but I'm saying it'll be the same seasonal pass method of you got to buy the season pass to get the new gun because it's going to be the meta.
So to Ian's point, like the constant addition of guns every year because they're doing another annual Call of Duty release. If when Warzone 2 comes out, we have a 2-year gap between Call of Duty games. So we're not going to get another annual release that's going to release another 50 guns in the game. So anything else they add to that is going to be additions to either Modern Warfare 2 or Warzone 2, whatever they specifically add to the game. If they want to add a handful of guns, fine. You're not going to get a front load of 50 guns all at once. They're possibly game breaking because they're just new and built on a different engine or a different game or whatever.
Right.
This is a
So-
whole nother issue.
It still might be able to give them time to settle in and take the time to figure out the game and get it working. So I think to your earlier point, I haven't heard anything either about anything bad working culture or anything like that at Microsoft-owned studios. I think everything
Right.
seems to be going pretty good for anybody under the Microsoft umbrella. I even think I've seen headlines and articles saying that Microsoft almost seems too relaxed, that they're not up any of these studios or developers' asses trying to get games out there. And people are like, well, should we be doing something? Or like, is someone going to tell us we need to do something? Because they just seem like they're just
Psychonauts
letting them
came
go
out.
and make
We're all
stuff.
good. Psychonauts came out. It's all fine.
I mean, here's the thing, like the creativity and that creative flow that makes the best games we're going to get doesn't come from that pressure grind that we've seen so much recently where it's
Or just
whether it's
Activision.
Ubisoft or EA or Activision or whatever one of these big companies forcing these developers to push out games year after year
Well, the
after
flip
year,
side is
the games
have
get
to-
stale and boring.
you have to get people to make decisions, right? Otherwise, if
Because
they
you
don't
have
have any
Duke Nukem
deadlines,
Forever.
yeah, everyone's just going to say, oh, okay, well, we could try, I don't know, let's change this. And then it's just a constant cycle of changing what you're doing and not releasing anything.
But I don't think we're at that point yet with the current Microsoft model. Like, Infinite came out. They forced it out eventually. They didn't keep delaying it. Infinite
Yeah.
got pushed out, probably still too early, possibly, depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, Bethesda's met their target, Ghostwire Tokyo is coming out tomorrow, I think?
I
Yeah,
think the 25th,
We're
yeah,
recording
tomorrow.
this.
Yeah.
That's
So,
tomorrow.
Microsoft's been in control of that now for the last year and a half or whatever. its
Starfield's
development
still on
cycle.
schedule for November.
Yeah,
Hasn't
so
been
I
delayed,
don't think there's been
which might
for
still happen, but
Bethesda, there hasn't been any changes. I think from a lot of the other Microsoft studios, I think they're letting them play around more because they're not working on a lead IP.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not working on that, and it's not. And Starfield's a new IP, but it's from the makers of Your Life. So
Oh, yeah.
why they're kind of doing that more.
Well-
I'm curious how it's going to be because we're getting to that point where there's this consolidation, which is probably going to slow down now that the Fed's raising the interest rate. Money's no longer free. And also with inflation, that was another reason to burn all this cash because your money was worth less every day. So that's why we saw a lot of these big expenditures recently. I think that's going to start to slow down as interest rates get cut and it's a little harder to switch these. And I don't think, like you mentioned, I don't think we'll have the government blocking this deal because at the end of the day, even by purchasing Activision Blizzard, Microsoft's still number 3 in video game revenue.
Yeah.
Oh, fair. Yeah.
and the other aspect to it is I think, from a gamer's perspective, I don't personally like to see things consolidate as much, but if Microsoft is going to take studios that are maybe, I guess, handling things in a shitty way, the way that Activision Blizzard, I guess, was handling things given the way their employees' response and all the accusations and all that, and they're going to right that ship, I don't mind it as much.
I mean,
Whereas,
that's-
like the Sony
That's an
with
outcome
Bungie
that might
thing-
be happening because they bought it, but that's obviously I don't
That's
think
not the
Mike's
reason they
saying this.
bought it.
That's not the reason they bought it. I don't
I'm
think
saying
he's
it's
that,
something that'll
but
make it okay
it's a
for me.
byproduct.
Right. That byproduct to me makes it worth it. Whereas Sony buying Bungie to me is just a keeping up with the Joneses thing purely.
Well, also, I'm very curious because they said they bought Bungie because they want to use their history and their experience of live, what are the games as a service
Live
model,
service.
live service games as a service, and they want to release I think 10 live service games for the next 5 years or something crazy, and that's
Right.
just too fucking many.
Yeah.
And
too
to be
fucking
completely honest, if they this is where I would say, as a huge Destiny fan, and don't get me wrong, Destiny is pretty successful, and I think that's in spite of Bungie's live service. and I think that's where Sony may have made a misstep here, is that Bungie's live service, honestly, is not good. They update the game every couple of months to fix broken shit. I mean, it doesn't...
Okay, they are not frequently than that, because Telesto's broken way more often than that.
But it stays broken. Like when
they
Telesto,
just
just let it go.
They update the game to take Telesto out of certain activities.
I mean, to also be clear, too, I don't know many live service games that actually keep up to stuff and make sure everything's working all the time. Every live service game I can think of has issues. The only one that I actually think does pretty well and constant updates to refresh is Fortnite.
Right, and what I guess the point I'm getting at is, in terms of turnover on it, you're talking about a live service game company from Bungie. Now, I'll ask you both this, since neither one of you is into Destiny as much as I am. How many days do you think it's been for a live service game that Sony just paid almost $4 billion for the company to run their live service? How many days do you think it's been since the last PvP map was added to Destiny?
Okay, well, we've talked about this before. It's been like years. I don't remember now. It's been like 4 years.
Over 900 days.
Oh, not even 3 years. That's nothing.
Since last time a PvP map was added, it has been over 900 days, and this is the live service company that Sony wants to buy to operate things for them.
I guess the issue comes
question
down to,
whether that's a
care
good
about
choice.
PvP, which I think is a very good point to bring up.
They might care more if we got a new map more than every 900 days.
Because Lost Ark today with the new patch released ranked PvP, and they put out a Twitter poll like, you gonna hit like platinum rank, bronze rank, or you don't give a shit? And 56% of players said don't give a shit.
Yeah, but that's a different. That's different than a different. FPS,
but I think that's the same
PvP,
thing with New World. A lot of people got turned off when it was just a PvP game. I think the PvP aspect's a little overblown in some of these games where you have another focus to go to. Like COD doesn't have that issue because that's really all
there's
the
game. There's a fairly meaningless campaign, and then you hop into PvP.
Like you're going for that. So I think with Destiny, though, they're buying a company that has managed servers and then been through hardware refreshes too with their games now. And at the very least, it's not Anthem. We're not talking about the company that released Anthem.
They
didn't release Battleborn. They have a game that's still, like I said, top 10 played on Steam daily. Like
I understand, but to be clear,
they got it on Stadia.
This is this is still a company in Bungie that we are in year 7 of Destiny at this point.
Yes,
honestly, we are in year 7,
stunning.
and we are still on peer-to-peer servers. You're talking about them with their experience with servers. They use peer-to-peer servers for a PvP experience.
Yeah, but that's called being cheap.
I mean, either way, Mike, what I'm thinking of, like any live service game too, just the fact that Destiny is still around 7 years later, they're doing something right as a live service game.
The game is fun as shit.
Okay.
The core game is fun as shit, but I'm saying like
and the live service model is able to fund it.
The framework and the foundation the game is built upon is so great that it keeps people playing, but the management of the game is extremely poor.
I just find it tough for me to say anyone does it well that's not Fortnite. I feel like most players just dislike the active development cycle. Like, even Respawn people give shit all the time for, and I think Apex is, like, pretty well managed.
Apex, I think, is one of the better ones too, but they have definitely had their issues with bugs and stuff when they update stuff too.
Well, I think like online, if you read about it, like people hate them. I think Bungie does it in the space. There's just not that many people that do it better. There's just really not like.
There's not many options, I guess, is what you're saying. There's not a lot of options in companies to get to manage live service games for you.
If you're picking them, it's what? Warzone, Fortnite,
Apex.
And I guess if you want to include like WoW and stuff, like the bigger MMOs.
I mean, things like PUBG are still out there too.
What?
Doesn't PUBG operate like a live service still?
Oh, that's a game, yeah. That game's out still. I forgot about that.
Got Tarkov.
I played 10 games and we found out it didn't have crossplay, so I stopped.
But you've got Tarkov and you've got Valorant that operates on a somewhat live service basis. It's not a battle royale, but it's a live service.
That's Rito. Rito does their own thing. No one's buying Rito except Tencent.
We're talking
you can't buy Rito.
We're talking about live service options, and I'm just saying
Rito's untouchable.
All right.
Because you have to buy Tencent. Ain't no one buying Tencent.
All right.
All right,
That's
we're getting
true.
hung up on
Nobody's
this now
buying
too.
10 cents.
So
Spider-Man sucks.
untrue. But moving on.
What the fuck does...
Ian, I think you kind of talked about it, but the deal was Sony and Bungie, right? So if Bungie remains an independent studio and keeps the Destiny IP, what does Sony get out of the deal? So you're saying the only thing they're really getting is the expertise, quote unquote, with live service stuff.
That's what Sony said they're getting. That's
Well, I mean,
what
and the
they
profits,
specifically
'cause they
said in
own
the
them.
deal is they want that experience that Bungie has. They'll continue. They're obviously going to get a cut of the revenue and stuff because they own
Yeah.
it now. However, that's going to be set up as because they're going to be an independent subsidiary of Sony, where Sony might not necessarily force certain policies on them for Destiny future content. It's a whole another thing because none of us have the contract to read how that deal
Right.
went out. It's very different than what we know what Microsoft's is for the most part, just because they are very open that they're buying the whole studio and changing the culture.
Yeah.
Sony seems to be, we bought them to fund them and bring and basically snag some of their design people to help us develop our 10 live service games we want to release. And I think it's like the next 5 years, which that's like 2 fucking a year, and that's too many
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
one
well-
company. There's already like too many. I'm playing Lost Ark. I got to quit that, or I got to start playing. I got too many games that are live service to play, and not including my non-live service games I want to play. There's too many live service games. Stop it. Just make them all have NFTs so I don't have to play them.
Just
I want that now. I want you to announce NFTs for games so I can skip them.
This needs to be where games just be Elden Ring, that has 0 microtransactions, 0 live service shit, 0 any of that. Just buy the game and play it.
I mean, they started nerfing stuff already.
No.
There's active patches for it. There's servers for people to connect to for online. It's an always online game.
No, it's not. You can play offline.
We'll see about that. Give it time.
I mean, do you see the Bungie Sony deal is sort of like reactionary to Microsoft? Do you think
Absolutely.
like Microsoft buying a bunch of studios, so now Sony
No.
feels like they got to do the same thing?
This deal has this level of money and this type of buy has been in the works for a long time. I'm sure at the same Bungie's been talking to Microsoft too. This deal didn't get wrapped up in 2 weeks. Like
No,
they-
no,
I
no,
think
no, no,
this-
no.
I'm not
It's
just
not-
talking
it's
about
not
just
reactionary
because
reactionary
of
to
the.
Bethesda more than
Yeah, I'm
anything.
not talking
No,
about
I mean,
reactionary
this-
to Activision,
this
but like
consolidation
years
has
ago.
been happening for a long time, and I don't
Right.
think it's I don't think it's a reactionary in that sense. It's reactionary to market flavors happening that made it easier to acquire studios.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a direct reaction to anything Microsoft specifically has done because of the scale of it. It's just.
I mean, I think
how this
Microsoft
goes.
is very clearly trying to get studios under their belt. They want to pad up Game Pass. They want people to get on the subscription model service. Sony has also been buying studios too. They just bought another one this week. What was it? Haven Software, I think they bought. Was Jade
Yeah,
Raymond's
they've been
studio?
buying up like smaller, talented studios.
Well-
They have not made, other than the Bungie thing, giant acquisitions lately.
Right. So I don't know if Sony is now trying to start, like, depending on what type of rumors you hear or read, I don't know, and I guess what do you guys think? Since Microsoft has proven that I think Game Pass is a viable option, do you have any idea if Sony is working on something like that? Do you see Sony kind of, like, they've always tried to stay away from that. It doesn't seem like they've
No.
wanted to do the subscription model service like that and have a games library that way. They seem to be shying away from it, but Microsoft has proven it's working. I don't know. Do you think Sony will go that way with some of the stuff they're buying?
I don't.
They have PlayStation Now that's already kind of like that. I believe it's mostly to play the PlayStation games on your PC through like cloud software.
Yeah.
So they have something similar already. It's not great. It exists.
A lot
They
of
had
what they
PlayStation
have
View,
is...
which was their TV service that they cut.
Yeah.
I think Sony's still committed to hardware first business, and they believe you push hardware by putting out AAA single player experiences. And I think they're trying to diversify that some with the Bungie acquisition to spread out a little bit, to not maybe fall behind in the multiplayer sphere, just not just to Microsoft, but to gaming in general. I
Gotcha.
think we've
Okay.
been moving more this direction. Fortnite's an experience now. It's not a game, you know?
Yeah.
Fortnite is a
And-
whole other fucking, like, you could have a child now that only participates in Fortnite and never plays another game the rest of their life. And they wouldn't run out of content to do, you know? Like, that would be enough for them. You could just tell them the computer is a Fortnite machine. They wouldn't know any better if the only
You do
thing
nothing
on
else
it is
on
Fortnite.
on that machine. There's no Word, there's no spreadsheets, there's no internet. It's just
It launches
for Fortnite.
straight to Fortnite. You have it run on startup. And I think that's what Sony's doing. I think they're still hardware first. Hardware is what makes them money. I think they're going for. It's kind of how their other businesses are. A lot of hardware focuses. Like even the movie division was like helping out the Solidify Blu-ray sales.
Yeah,
The Solidify hardware.
yeah.
I think that's still Sony's MO, and I don't think that changes until Sony as a whole changes and they get a different kind of CEO in that position, which I don't foresee anytime soon.
Mike, do you think we'll see a Sony subscription service model like Game Pass or no?
I mean, you have PS Plus already, which is not anywhere near the value that you're getting from Game Pass.
Yeah.
And the value's not there, but they're also not charging as much for it. It's like $60 for a year of PS Plus, right? Whereas Game Pass is still $15 a month, which I'm not experiencing yet because I bought a shit ton of it ahead of time, and I'm still paid up for like over a year.
Mine finally kicks out, I think, in January or June. June is when I'm going to have to pay $15 a month if I still want Game Pass.
Right. You're the one that told me about it, and I just kept re-upping it until they stopped letting you just up the Game Pass for whatever it was.
And there's like a buck, and then you could preload a couple years ahead.
Yeah, you just paid
It's
like the
kinda-
Xbox Live Gold price
Yeah.
to get the full year as opposed to the $15 a month. You paid like $60 or whatever you could get the gold.
But at this point,
for.
like, I'm addicted, so I'm going to end up paying $15 a month from here on out because they locked me in.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is, do I see them getting something like that? No. The reason for that is they rely on those sales. They need the game sales more than they need the subscription prices, because the games that they're putting on their service are not as replayable as some of the games that you're getting on the Game Pass service, because they rely so much on their studios right now to be single-player driven narratives.
Yeah.
Whereas Game Pass has a lot of multiplayer driven stuff, and I think maybe that's part of the Bungie acquisition, is they want the multiplayer end to come in so that people have a reason, maybe in the future, for a live service like that. Maybe they start up a Game Pass thing. You know what I mean? And, like Game Pass took a long while to ruminate and get to where it is now, where it's actually a worthwhile thing. Maybe they start something like that soon, so that by the time they're ready for these live service games to kick off, that they have a reason for you to buy it and keep up with it, as opposed to paying for it for however long, playing what you wanted to play, and then stopping.
I just don't see it also because I don't think we mentioned this, is just how much Microsoft is worth. Not Xbox division. Microsoft can afford to do this.
Yes.
Sony, the video game division, is their highest profit division in Sony, and it's a much smaller company than Microsoft. I don't think they would survive it.
You mean like
Right.
upfront the cost to get that up and running?
Yeah,
and
I
have to-
don't know how many years they could do it if they couldn't. If the market doesn't completely shift that way, like Microsoft is predicting, I don't think they could eat losses like that, like
Yeah.
Microsoft can.
I know, we talked about it pretty much every time we talk about video games and how the future of games. It's just like Microsoft has their model, which is go through Xbox Live, Game Pass, streaming video games anywhere you want to play. You can stream our library of stuff. Sony is still, like Ian said, very much on the hardware side. We want to sell consoles, we want to sell discs, we want to sell full games, and get you. That's how we're going to make the profit there. They're going different directions. It's going to be very interesting in a couple of years to see where this goes and who ends up where, and
Because
if one really goes ahead of the other, like I really don't, because they're going two different directions. It's hard for me to see them compete in the same way. Like I still feel like I don't know where the money is. Like I'm still surprised Microsoft makes money off of all the studios they are buying, on top of whatever they have to license for games to come to Game Pass. Like that can't be cheap either.
Well, I think like the Epic Game Store, I don't think they're making money off that currently.
No, they're just
but
trying
the plan
to draw
is
you in.
eventually we will.
Yeah,
Because
right.
I think part of it too we got to remember is like the whole Southeast Asian market is basically a mobile market. And games, cloud gaming, xCloud, that's what that's for.
yeah,
That
yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing is to set up to get the Southeast Asian market engaged with the Xbox brand through their phone and gaming in there. Like there's some huge MMOs we've never heard of that are big on mobile devices in Southeast Asia that make not maybe Fortnite money, but Warzone money. You know?
And
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
and I think it's something like, potentially, I'm not going to say Sony will ever go for it, but I could see a world in the future where you can buy Game Pass on PlayStation.
No, I mean,
Oh yeah,
Phil
I think they've
Spencer
already
has
tried that.
tried.
Yeah,
He's also talking to Nintendo about it.
I've heard that
I think
too.
it's more
Yeah.
likely to end up on Nintendo. Nintendo already has a couple cloud games, like Control on Switch is a cloud game.
Right.
So I could see them letting it happen. And this isn't maybe totally related, but it just came up recently because the Xbox has been a 20-year brand now, I think it is, right?
Something like that.
You know how
yeah.
many consoles Microsoft sold in Japan? Of all of their consoles combined.
It's
I
not a
guess it's a
lot.
very low number because I don't think they sell a lot over there.
Percentage-wise,
2.25
compared to PlayStation.
million.
Yeah.
out of all their consoles.
From original Xbox to the Series X, 2.25 million.
That, and right. And
I'm pretty sure they sold
That's
more
probably-
versions of the newest Pokemon in Japan than that.
easily.
Like,
That's not
it's
even
wild
close.
how bad Microsoft does in Japan.
Yeah.
That's why I wonder with the mobile stuff, though, because Japan has a very mobile-focused thing. That's kind of why the Switch is the Switch. Because it's
Well-
that home console that's really a mobile console. It doesn't take up a lot of room in the smaller Japanese apartments. I wonder if xCloud can penetrate Japan for Microsoft.
Well, at
that
least
they've
the
never been able to do
interesting
before.
stuff for Microsoft, I feel like, is it like what's not selling over there? Is it just the console themselves, or is it the games that they don't care about? Because if they can access them on their phone, if it's the same games, they're not going to give a crap about that anyway.
Well, I mean, they're not buying the console in the first place, so it's hard to. The attach rate, I don't know what the attach rate is off the top of my head.
Okay, so
Like,
there
how
might
many
be games
games they're selling.
interesting for them. They're just not getting the hardware to
Well,
play the game, so they're not.
And also
experiencing
remember, Microsoft during the 360 days had bought in a couple Japanese studios
yes,
to try
yeah.
and penetrate that market. I think they've moved away from that strategy recently, but I could see them trying again.
Well, and
Square
you're
Enix
talking
is probably
about
for sale.
And you're talking about an American company competing directly with two Japanese companies for their business.
Right.
You're talking about Sony and Nintendo being the other two giants in this industry. And Japan, unlike the United States, is a very small country by comparison in terms of just geography. And there's something about, I mean, it's been a thing here for how long? Buying made in the USA. Are you going to be able to penetrate that, patriotic sense of like, I buy Nintendo and Sony because they're Japanese companies that a lot of, not saying all or anything like that, but a lot of the people that live there may have. Are you going to be able to penetrate that? Are you going to
Which
be
is
able
something Apple
break
was
through?
able to do with the iPhone. So I'm curious if Microsoft's
But
able
were
to
they
take
re-
away anything from that.
were they competing with other Japanese companies?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of Japan had like flip phones even into like several generations of iPhone, but Apple has at this point really penetrated the market to be the major player in the Japanese phone market now, whereas before it was mostly smaller Japanese companies that consolidated over time. Maybe not, they don't have an Apple of Japan over there, but I think
Right.
there's a
That's
way
what I'm
for
saying. You're
US
really talking
companies
about like
to,
Google versus Apple in this case, as opposed to
there's still,
traditional
there's-
Japanese companies versus an
like,
American
you
company.
even have Huawei, which is the Chinese brand that makes the smartphones cheaper. I think there's still ways to penetrate the market as a foreigner, even with two titans is like Nintendo and Sony. I think it's just finding the right pitch, and I think xCloud is the best chance Microsoft's had of it.
Well, I'm still
Right.
maybe this is just my
I
thought
don't
process,
disagree
but
with that at all.
with Sony and Nintendo, it's like they definitely have games that are geared toward the Japanese audience. I can't think of a lot of games on Xbox that are geared towards that audience. So is the audience being hooked because the games are there, or are the games being made for that audience because they have the consoles?
That chicken egg.
Yeah, so I guess
agree.
like in my mind, if Microsoft is able to make some sort of like a game for the Japanese market that then can be accessed through the cloud, that might be their way in. I just can't think of anything. Like you said, I think they had some Japanese studios. They don't anymore. I don't know of any studios they have that are making games for that market.
I don't
And it's
think they
either
do,
because
but
maybe because it's just not there that they're not bothering with it. But if they want to weigh in, I feel like that's the way to do it.
they have though recently licensed like for xCloud, for not xCloud, but for Game Pass releases some of the Final Fantasy titles.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's separate in Japan, but they brought over Phantasy Star Online 2, which is a much bigger game in Japan that Microsoft led the Western release of that.
Yeah,
They're
true.
still trying to make, I think, inroads there. And, part of the problem is, too, I think Microsoft was really well known for their shooter franchises, which just aren't popular in Japan.
Right.
Like, Apex somehow blew up in Japan, and no one's still 100% sure why. People think it's because of the cast of characters, but that's probably the biggest shooter Japan's had.
It's got a little
is
anime
Apex.
feel to it, so I think that could fit.
Well, I was gonna say, Overwatch was very big in South Korea, though, wasn't it?
Mhm.
But it didn't really catch in Japan.
No, it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
all the
Apex
best
did, though.
teams and all that and shit were all
Mhm.
South Korean, and it was huge there. But
Which goes into the whole Blizzard owns South Korea somehow thing. Which
yeah,
I don't get how they have like multiple titles that dominate that country.
Yeah, because it doesn't make it. There's not really a rhyme or reason to it. Like, a lot of the Japanese titles we're talking about are Japanese made and like traditionally
Mhm.
made in like Japanese language that gets translated to English
Yeah.
when they get brought here. Where that's
they-
not the
yeah, they
case with these
followed
titles
that
that
stuff.
Blizzard has going into South Korea.
StarCraft has nothing to do with South Korea.
That's what I mean. Like, it's made in English and translated to Korean. It's not. It's weird. It's definitely different.
So I'm looking at the clock, and we've already really
Yeah.
made this episode twice as long as I originally.
And we
thought it
stopped
was gonna be.
talking about the news. We've started just talking about general strategy for these companies.
So let's try to wrap
Hire
up with
us.
like between the two deals, between Microsoft getting Activision Blizzard and Sony getting Bungie. I guess which one do you think had the better deal? Which one do you think made out better? And
I
we'll
mean-
just kind of wrap up with that.
I thought you were going to say something else. I was going to be like, well, obviously the one that was for 10 times as much was more important. But the better deal, I still think Microsoft, they're going to make that money back, I would say within 5-7 years, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
won't take them long. They probably won't make us back as quickly as Disney did with Star Wars. And I think the other issue is Sony's is less tangible, the benefit. We'll
Right.
see.
Yeah.
Like, even if, let's say, like 3 of these live service games are pretty big hits they have coming out, are we ever going to be able to, in a tangible way, say that's because of the Bungie deal? I don't think so. Maybe someone at Sony would know, but I don't think we'd ever know. So I don't know if we're ever going to be like, thank God they bought Bungie. That
I almost
saved
feel like
them.
you'd
You know what I mean?
see more on Bungie's end than Sony's end. Like,
Yeah,
you can,
I think
you can
Bungie
see more
now,
on Bungie benefits than Sony benefits.
because Bungie, once again, like they did with Activision, has secure funding, but they don't have megalomaniac Bobby Kotick, who at 60 years old is going by Bobby.
I think that this one's hard to judge, and I think part of what Ian said is right. I think Microsoft makes that money back. I don't know if 5 to 7 years to make that kind of money back. I don't honestly know. That's really tough to tell. But I guess the difference in the deals for me in terms of price, you're talking about 20 times the price.
Oh, yeah.
That is involved here. So for me, it's hard to say like, oh yeah, they got a better deal or what. Well, fuck if I know what $70 billion really buys you. I don't fucking like it. That's really tough for me to say. Like, is $70 billion a good deal for, Activision Blizzard?
I mean, I guess if you
I don't
compare it to what it
know,
was
like-
worth a year before, yeah, great deal. So, like,
Well, yeah, but you can't compare that because it might never be worth that again. Like, it's
you're not wrong. Well, it never will be because it's not an independent company.
right. No,
You're
but
right,
you get what
though.
I'm
But
saying.
we don't know.
You don't know what's going to happen. Like, you can't say, like, well, it was worth that a year ago. Well, shit, so was this, and it's worth 2 cents now. Like, it's,
Hello, Bitcoin.
yeah. It's one of those things where I hope they both made good deals and that we, the gamers, benefit a lot from it. That's all I really give a shit about. You know what I mean? Like, if Microsoft loses a few $1 billion, I could not give a fuck. It
Yeah, I
does
think-
not. It will never affect me. And the same goes for Sony. It does not affect me. I just want a better experience on the end user. Us.
I guess I'm more worried. The Sony deal, I think, just because the smaller nature of Sony is more worrying if the deal was bad because it could hurt them more. And
Right.
we need at least these two companies to exist for some competition.
And that's I think part of it, right? Is
Yeah,
that
'cause
like
Nintendo's
Microsoft
really its
continues
own
to
thing.
buy studios all the time, and that gets a little bit scary because they're getting so much under their umbrella. But like Mike said, as a consumer, I'm like, give them all the fucking shit because I know that's going to end up on Game Pass, and I am subscribed to Game Pass. So as a consumer, that's just more shit for me
And
to have access to and be
I
able to
just-
play.
And even like on that, like to me, it's not necessarily just I subscribe to Game Pass, so I get to play it because it's on Game Pass. For me, it's like I want the games to be better.
Oh yeah, that's part
like
of it
I
too.
personally,
Yes.
honestly, like in the last, let's say 7 years or so, I have seen a downturn in what should be a higher quality of game. Things look prettier, but I see so many much shittier business practices than we ever dealt with before popping up in how games are developed and presented to us with a lot of these live service games. And it has become so just money grubbing and greedy on just the nickel and dime level that they do to us. I want to see that get better. I want to see games and the gaming culture and the culture of creating games get better. If
And even
this
just the
leads to
development
that,
cycles.
cool. Right. The development
Like-
cycles for the developers, for the people, for everything. I don't need a COD every year. I don't need an Assassin's Creed every year, even though that's not part of this. Yet. Who knows what they're buying next. But I don't need these things. And yet we still have the same franchises so often from the companies with the most resources to create new great IP. We get the same franchises shoved down our throats because profits.
Yeah.
So, like in my own perfect world, Activision puts the money towards making a new great first-person shooter from Treyarch in 2024.
That's what Oblivion did. They've since getting bought by Microsoft. They're doing 3 new IPs.
Yeah, and that's what I want to see happening: new IPs, not sequels and the same cookie-cutter bullshit that we always get.
And that's something I think I've trusted with, not that I know the guy, but anything that I see or read interviews or whatever from Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer seems like he knows what he wants to do. He knows how developers work. He knows how to treat developers and studios and give them the time, the resources, and it seems like Ian was saying, let them play and make new stuff. We're gonna foot the bill. It's fine. He seems much more relaxed than other studios and stuff like that. And if he's in charge of all these studios and can let them do what they want to do when they want to do it, I think everybody benefits.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's easy to be that way when you're Microsoft and you have what amounts to essentially an unlimited bankroll.
Yeah.
But also, we can't forget that they were talking about selling off the Xbox division back like in the 360 era and stuff. So I think he's also doing a very good job of handling that C-suite level Microsoft thing. So who knows where we are when he leaves.
Phil Spencer is Xbox right now. Like, he turned it around from the Xbox One's debut at E3, however many years ago that was. Like, he bounced back well for them.
And thankfully, he's young and he seems very motivated to stick with it and keep it as good as it can be.
All right, so like I said,
Wrap
I think
it up!
we've talked long enough. Yeah, this is it. I'll be done before. I gotta cut these
Cut
guys
all
off
this.
before. Yeah.
Cut all the show.
All right, hello everybody. We're back for a little addition to this episode, which we kind of teased last week. When I talked about splitting the episode, I said if the rumors were true, we might have something else to add to the next episode, and here we are. One of the few times, I guess, we've actually talked about news as it happens. We're usually behind the curve, so this is something that's actually new, and we're talking about it as it happens. I got Mike and Ian back for this bit. We're just going to kind of jump into it, and you'll hear from them probably a little bit. So, we talked about it earlier in the episode about PlayStation's reaction to the Game Pass and if they're possibly considering consolidating their studios to start their own Game Pass-like subscription service and how likely that could be. I think we kind of leaning towards that it either wasn't going to happen or at least happening later since their marketing strategies are different from Xbox. But here we are a few days later and Sony has announced they are revamping their PlayStation Plus subscriptions and adding 3 tiers of options. And they said they hope to roll this out before the end of June for most markets. Going over the tiers that they talked about, we have a PlayStation Plus Essential, which it says provides the same benefits the PlayStation Plus members are getting today, such as 2 monthly downloadable games, exclusive discounts, cloud storage for saved games, and online multiplayer access. There are no existing chains for PlayStation Plus members in this tier, so this is the same price as current PlayStation Plus subscriptions. So that is $10 a month, $25 if you pay quarterly, and $60 if you pay yearly. So that's the first tier. Second tier, PlayStation Plus Extra, which provides all the benefits from the Essential tier, and then adds a catalog of up to 400 of the most enjoyable PS4 and PS5 games, including blockbuster hits from our PlayStation Studios catalog and third-party partners. Games in the extra tier are downloadable for play, so it doesn't really say anything about streaming in this tier. Prices for this tier, $15 a month, $40 if you pay quarterly, or $100 for the year. The third tier is PlayStation Plus Premium, which provides all the benefits from the essential and extra tiers, adds up to 340 additional games, including PS3 games available via cloud streaming. It does not say you can download them, literally just streaming. A catalog of beloved classic games available in both streaming and download options from the original PlayStation, PS2, and PSP generations. Offers cloud streaming access for original PlayStation, PS2, PSP, and PS4 games offered in the extra and premium tier markets, where PlayStation Now is currently available. Customers can stream games using PS4 and PS5 consoles and PC. And then it goes on to, it has a little asterisk saying PC streaming is not available in Japan at launch and will be supported in a future update. Limited time game trials will also be offered in this tier, so customers can try to select games before they buy. Price for this one is $18 a month, $50 quarterly, and $120 if you pay yearly. Press release goes on to say the new extra and premium tiers represent a major evolution for PlayStation Plus. With these tiers, our key focus is to ensure that the hundreds of games we offer will include the best quality content set us apart. At launch, we plan to include titles such as Death Stranding, God of War, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, Mortal Kombat 11, and Returnal. We're working closely with our imaginative developers from PlayStation Studios and third-party partners to include some of the best gaming experiences available with a library that will be regularly refreshed. More details to come on the games we'll have on our new PlayStation Plus service. They say when the new PlayStation Plus service launches, PlayStation Now will transition into the new PlayStation Plus offering and will no longer be available as a standalone service. PlayStation Now customers will migrate over to PlayStation Plus Premium with no increase to their current subscription fees at launch. It's a massive effort they are rolling out over the next PlayStation Plus offering and phased in a regional approach in the June timeframe. We'll begin with the initial launch in several markets in Asia, followed by North America, Europe, and the rest of the world where PlayStation Plus is offered. We aim to have most PlayStation Network territories live with our new PlayStation Plus game subscription service by the end of the first half of 2022. Why they didn't just say the end of June, I don't know. But we also plan to expand our cloud streaming benefit to additional markets, and we'll provide more details at a later date. Anything else in here that's worth mentioning?
But the reason they said first half is it also, they could just be like, oh, we meant fiscal year.
Oh, yeah,
like
I guess.
Something's late.
Yeah, it just says end of the first half of 2022. So, yeah, I don't know. Everything else is saying June. They keep talking about June, so I don't know. It's first half of 2022 is the end of June. With the all-new PlayStation Plus, we're focusing on delivering compelling game subscription service with curated content from our exclusive PlayStation Studios team and our third-party partners. The newly enhanced PlayStation Plus will enable our fans to discover and engage more content. So they don't seem like they are getting... I should have looked for other stuff. I remember seeing in articles, I think they confirmed that they are not doing like the day and date stuff that Game Pass does. It seems like at least the first party stuff, I'm assuming the third party stuff is the same way, that it's not hitting the day it releases. You still have to wait a little bit before it shows up on this service.
Well, the CEO explicitly said that to support the style and density and quality of their first party games, it would be impossible to provide them day and date on this service.
Even though their competitor has been doing it, so...
Well, no, but does their competitor have the sheer quality?
Is that
what
the
he's
difference?
trying to claim. He's trying to throw shade, like their games aren't as good as ours.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at Halo Infinite compared to Horizon. I mean, I think there's something to be said for those two recent ones.
Yeah.
You could argue.
I have not played Horizon, and I've avoided spoilers, but I'm sure it's very good. So.
Yeah. I've not played it either, so I can't attribute to that either. So, just for comparison's sake, for anyone that doesn't have Xbox Live or Xbox Game Pass, here are some price comparisons. So, Xbox Live, which gives you the ability to play online, you get 2 well, I guess 4 monthly games because you get 2 Xbox One and 2 360 games for free if you're part of Gold. They're not the best quality anymore because they're putting all their good shit on Game Pass, but it's there as part of the service. $10 a month, $25 for 3 months, $40 for 6 months, or $60 for the year is just for Xbox Live and the ability to play online. Xbox Game Pass, it is $10 a month for console, $10 a month for PC if you just want to play on either or. PC for their $10 a month also includes EA Play access, or you bundle them with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which includes your Xbox Live subscription, Xbox Game Pass for console and PC, and includes EA access for both, and that comes to $15 a month. So that's, I think, what at least Mike and I are signed up for, and we've been using.
Right, and they have no yearly price, correct?
I haven't seen one for Game Pass.
Neither have I. I just wanted to clarify for the listeners that there is not a yearly price on that.
Yeah, because I was looking at their Xbox's website for Game Pass to join it, and they only list 3 tiers: Ultimate, PC, or console. That's it.
Right.
But I think we talked. I might have even mentioned it the last time when we talked previously with all this stuff. The Xbox Game Pass pretty much has me locked in. Like I'm so used to it now that it's going to be hard not to have it. And I feel like I'm going to be giving Microsoft $15 a month for the foreseeable future.
I don't know. With Game Pass, I don't feel as locked into it. I feel like it's something that I wish I was using more than I am.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that too.
There's just so much there, and then it gets intimidating, and I really have to drop the games as a service games that I play, where I just play the same thing for 1,000 hours and nothing else.
Yeah, that's right.
I gotta drop that and start playing more variety, and I think I'll start getting my money's worth. I honestly don't think I've gotten my money's worth out of Game Pass because I tend to play so much of just a couple games.
Yeah.
So it has interfered with me getting value out of it.
Yeah. So I threw a lot of information at you guys. Ian, what do you think of Sony's tiers? Are they a good deal? Do you think they're split up fair? Price points sound okay?
Well, I mean, the first tier is just the current service.
Yeah.
So it's whatever. I mean, I guess it's fair. They didn't take anything away from you. That's cool, I guess. Hey, now it's essential because you need it. You fucking need it. Gotta buy it, guys. The extra tier, they're going 400 games roughly. Xbox still advertises as just over 100 games for all of their tiers.
Yeah.
Sony's like, here's 400-ish PS4 and PS5 games. I am curious how much of that is overlap where you have the PS5 and PS4 version
right,
of games.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully not much.
More into it. I mean, that's the one that's really competing with Game Pass because it's the same price. Yeah. You don't get the xCloud part of it. You don't get the cloud there, but I don't know how much that part matters to most people. Like, I'm sure it's a nice benefit, but I don't think that many people care about it. It's just, I think the key here is you're not getting those first-party titles, which Sony was never going to do, which I think we discussed before we started recording this.
Yeah.
That even regardless how we felt about them doing a Game Pass, they were never going to give away those key titles that move consoles.
Yeah.
No, you'll get them a couple years down the road, perhaps, but they're not
right now. It's 2 years to get it on PC, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's something similar for this.
You think they'd actually wait 2 years before putting it on their own subscription service?
I mean, that's how long they wait to put it on PC. I don't know. That's what my baseline would be without knowing.
I could see a year. 6 months seems too quick, but maybe at least a year.
We'll have to see what they do, but when did Miles Morales come out? That was a
launch title, right?
That was a PS5 launch, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was what, December 2020?
I'm trying to remember when the consoles came out. Yeah, probably something like
Well,
that.
I feel like it was meant to be a launch title, but it wasn't right at launch, or it was in that holiday 2020 season. So we're looking at about 18 months that they're willing to throw Miles Morales on.
Yeah, November 12th, 2020 was Miles Morales' release date.
Okay, so we could reasonably say that 18 months is an expectation we could start with. because that's about what they're going with here, since the service won't be out until just after 18 months, but approximately,
Well, I guess we could look at
you
two,
could say
like
that time frame.
the handful of games they mentioned, which what they said is going to include at launch of this service, so end of June when this goes live. Death Stranding, God of War, Marvel's Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, Mortal Kombat 11, and Returnal. Which one of those games is the most recent out of that list?
Well, Returnal might be more recent than Miles Morales.
So we could maybe base it off of
but it was
Returnal's
close.
release date.
Yeah, Returnal would have been after, but it was close. They were both. Maybe that was January or February.
Returnal says April 30th, 2021, according to Google.
Okay, so April. Then you're talking just over a year that they're winning. That's a first party title.
Right. So that sort of lines up with sort of my thoughts. I think anywhere between 6 months to a year for first party stuff I could see.
Well, and they also said they're going to have the playable demos
Right.
in there. Like, so we could possibly just see the demos for the first party titles within that first year be available. Like, hey, you want to try it out before you buy it?
And how do
Here
they
you
do?
go.
Do they do demos now? Is it like a limited time thing? Like you have 10 hours to play a thing and that's it, or do they just like
Demos
demos?
died
died when
can
magazines
return it.
died.
Sorry, you both talked at the same time.
I just said I feel like that's your return window. It's
So
like
you
depending on the service, it's like 2 hours here, 5 hours on that one. Like I think Steam.
Sony
is like
does
2
not
hours.
have a return policy.
They have no returns.
No, that's why they got real upset with CD Projekt Red.
Okay, and probably Activision.
So there isn't one. I said demos died when magazines died because they stopped giving demo discs.
Well, those discs
Like-
used to be like you had a finite part of a game that
yeah, but then there was the same thing on 360. Gave you a finite part of games for a while.
right.
Which was still in the demo disc era. Basically, demos have been dead since then. Like, you get them some, like the Steam Summer Game Fest Jam has, like, demos now. But, like, for the most part on consoles, demos are gone.
So
But you
well, that's
get
what I mean. Like,
playable
what would you demo
teasers.
then? Do you download the whole game and you only have a time of like some games do the early
Presumably,
access
that's what they mean.
stuff? Yeah, so it'd be like an early access type of thing where you can play the game, but you only get 5 to 10 hours of said game, and then it just locks you out, and you have to purchase the rest of the game if you want to finish what you're playing.
That in
I would
5 to
expect
10
that.
hours is generous. I would bet, like, 2 hours max
Yeah.
would be
Yeah,
what they
for
would do.
when it's on a service like that, yeah, I would think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Because
And
like,
that's just also going to be painful with hard drive space on these consoles.
Oh, yeah.
To download
Yeah.
a full game.
well,
for that.
didn't they say it was going to be cloud demos? Did they say that, or am I just?
The PlayStation Plus Premium, which is the highest tier, offers cloud streaming access for PlayStation, PS2, PSP, and PS4 games. Customers stream games using PS4 and PS5 consoles and PC. I think that's the only thing that mentions streaming is the premium tier.
So when they talk
Yeah, I
about the
don't-
demos, it doesn't.
And PS3
mention-
games are available via cloud streaming. So it doesn't say anything about demos being. It just
trying
says
to find the
limited
thing
time
about
game
demos.
trials will be offered in this tier, so customers can try to select games before they buy. So it doesn't tell you streaming or not. I'm
Okay.
guessing that means download, like Ian was talking about.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I just wanted to clarify that. And like personally, the last time I remember a game doing anything like this was several months before release. Resident Evil 7 had a playable teaser. I think they got the idea probably from PT, which was the game that never happened.
The most valuable demo of all time. You can sell your PS4 with a PT on it for like $900.
Yeah, the old Kojima Silent Hill game that just never came to be.
Well, it got canceled.
Yeah, it never came to be. It should be brought back. It should be made a thing
It
again.
won't.
It won't, but damn it, give me something to hope for. But I think they were going in that grain. They gave you like an hour's worth of gameplay. You could spend as much time as you wanted during that, but they anticipated it to be an hour's worth of time with the game. They
Yeah.
didn't show you how the game started. It wasn't like play the first hour. It was like they dropped you in at a point, and you had an hour to wander around one of the first areas of the game.
Yeah. So, Mike, what do you think about these tiers? Good deal?
I don't like that there's not as much options.
I mean, they give you 3 options.
No, they give you 3 options, but they lock you in. Because I would be much more apt to want the old stuff that's coming on the one tier. Like they say, like there's an additional 340 or whatever older games on that highest tier.
Yes.
I would be more apt to want just that without the other.
So you mean just the
but
old
I can only get it.
generation
just the older
stuff.
Just give me the old classic stuff. When I want to play a new game, I'll just buy it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'd rather have an option that gives me just that as a price.
I mean, that's pretty much who this tier is for. Like, if you're not getting day one releases with a lot of the new games, they want you to buy that stuff anyway. So the premium tier is basically just to, hey, you want to play some old games that you can't really get anywhere else? This is the way to do it. You have access to all that stuff.
Right, which they're saying, all told, that's like 700 and some odd games then? If they're saying 340 old games and 400...
Yes.
That's too much. I'll net my ADHD is just going to go off the friggin' wall looking at how many different games and trying to find the one I want. But not that that's a bad thing. Too many games, not a bad thing. It's just, I know myself. But it's something where I'm just looking at it like, couldn't there just be a classic package? As opposed to the one that forces the other on you.
It was called the PS1 Classic, and you could have bought it.
It had like 20 games on it. This has 340.
What do you want from them? You pick one or the other.
I understand.
That's the whole point. That they're not going to give you like just the retro games. Go buy those individually off the store. Go break out your PSP and buy them off the PSP store.
Yes,
the
PSP
What's clear here, though, is they don't mention Vita, which is upsetting. Where are the Vita games? I know at least 10 released. Where are they?
What about the movies I bought for my PSP? Can't I get those?
UMD discs still work on your PSP.
That's
no
true.
one's asking for your PS1 disc to work on the PS5. This is letting you play games now. I do like that the PS3 games have to be streamed because they don't want to figure out how to get the cell architecture to emulate properly on the PS5.
Yeah, I caught that too.
Fuck it, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to do that. I mean, that's the other thing. There's a lot of ways to play these older games. With like the Mister now has a PS1 core. There's a lot of emulation of Raspberry Pi to play this kind of stuff. So if you really want to play the old stuff, there's definitely non-perfect avenues to do it.
I understand
if you want
that.
to do it officially, like, give us our $18 and play Twisted Metal Black.
Right, and I get that, and I want to do that, but I also would rather give them whatever price they would want for it without the extra stuff in that middle tier.
I mean, this is much better than I think the Nintendo one. Like, where it's like, give us $50 a year and here's like some shitty NES game you don't care about and the Animal Crossing DLC.
So, speaking of, since I know, Brian, you didn't bring up the Nintendo one, Nintendo has been doing this recently. We never talked about it, but just recently they added a Nintendo 64 add-on to like the... So like if you have Nintendo Switch Online, you get NES and Super NES games. That's just part of it. You don't pay any extra for it. That's just what you pay to play online. So like I have Switch Online so I can play like competitive Pokemon, stuff like that. If you want to do anything like that, you have to have it. And the NES and SNES games come with that. But they just added, like, I think it's N64 and maybe Game Boy?
Genesis.
Or Genesis. N64 and Genesis games they put on this for an additional cost. And then I looked at it, and I looked at the list of games, and I'm like, you want that much for these, like, 8 games? And
it's only like a handful of stuff.
Yeah,
and the Animal Crossing DLC, like Ian mentioned. Like, so, if you're really into Animal Crossing...
It was just one of those confusing moments where I'm like, if you compare the three, Nintendo's definitely behind because it's like
this year it's the Mario Kart DLC though. So
yeah, they got to work on their subscription tiers.
You kind of get my point.
You're gonna pay it if you're on Nintendo. You're gonna pay it.
I'm not though. Like that one, I'm not at least because that one to
they don't care.
I understand it. Like it's just I would pay for it if they put more on it. When I say there's like 8 games, I might be being generous.
Yeah,
like it is extremely small.
Nintendo would much rather sell it to you again for another $50 as part of some shitty pack-in like that Year of Mario bullshit. I think here what we have is a
True.
clear-cut case of Sony trying to respond and doing the very best they can without compromising those day one sales they want for their single-player titles because they don't have a trillion-dollar market cap like Microsoft.
Yeah.
This is probably the best they could have done. I bet this even was a fight internally to get this much offered. And I think that's why there's 3 tiers and not just throw all that shit into the second tier.
Yeah.
They're like, we got to get a couple extra bucks for the streaming, the servers.
Because when it comes
servers.
Because when it comes down to it, this is the premium tier that would be the most comparable to Game Pass and Xbox Live and all that stuff bundled together is more expensive than what Game Pass Ultimate is. You're looking at $18 a month or 120 per year, which I guess amounts to what, $10 a month if you look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, like Mike said, Xbox does not have a yearly option. So if you pay the year up front for PlayStation Plus Premium, you are getting a deal where it comes in lower than what Xbox Game Pass Ultimates would be.
Comes in at like a third lower than what Game Pass Ultimate is.
Yeah. But I mean, just from comparison's sake, maybe just list of criteria. You can even throw a price point in there. How do you think this stacks up to Xboxes? Do you have a preference one way or the other between the two? Is the PlayStation one something you guys would sign up for and try?
Personally, I'm going to need to see the current PS4, PS5 games list before I can decide on that. If they have a very similar list of titles to what Xbox has. In other words, a bunch of indie games and, a lot of games that I'm saying if there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
Xbox is going to be the better value because it gets day and date releases. If it doesn't,
you care about those ones, so that's the key, though. I think too, you have to actually care about those first-party Xbox titles.
I mean, even if you don't, like, you're signed up for the service, so it's like the whole point is like it's gonna hopefully get you to play stuff you wouldn't normally pay. Yes, I'm not gonna pay $60 for this game, but it's available for Game Pass. Why don't I just fucking try it and see what it's like?
Death Stranding,
right?
There you go.
And this is something where I would say, a lot of these games on Game Pass, I have no interest in most of them. And you multiply that up to what PlayStation's planning on offering, and it's going to be the same thing for just about any gamer. There's very few gamers out there that are into every genre of video game.
So you don't dabble in anything in Game Pass. You just go for the games you're looking for, and if they're not there, they're not there. The ones you want, you try.
I didn't say that. I'm saying there's some games I'll immediately write off. It's like some genres I just do not play.
Yeah.
And then
there's yet to mention Tunic.
I have no idea what the fuck that is, so
Game of the Year.
Doubt it.
It's been getting a lot of buzz. It has. I haven't played it either, but I know it's on there.
I will look it up. But I guess
he's gonna be on his 4th game, like New Game Plus next podcast.
I'm on +8 now. It's fine.
No, I'm talking about Tunic.
Oh. All right. Well, I'll look into it. In terms of like the value, I think PlayStation has volume there in the total number of games they're offering, and they're trying to go with that volume and the classic feel that they can bring. And offer that to try and combat the day and date releases.
Yeah.
So they're like, we have a bunch more games, but you're not getting the day one stuff. I personally have interest in both. Like I said, I would rather be able just to get the classic games because that interests me more, going back and replaying through a bunch of older series that it's been a long time. I mean, when's the last time you actually played Metal Gear Solid? I'm assuming that will be there.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, if certain games aren't there and they're not getting their own classic library right, then it's like, what the hell's wrong? So we're assuming things like Metal Gear Solid 2, the Resident Evil games in their original format will be there.
Those are Konami games, so that's a lot tougher to get Konami to do something.
It's going to be interesting to see what third parties they get involved in this. Like, the games list is going to be a big seller for, I think, a lot of people. Like, they give you a handful of games at the start. We don't know how quickly some of the other first-party stuff's going to hit the service. We don't know how quickly some of the third-party stuff's going to hit the service, or what third-party games are going to be on the service when it goes live. Like, those are details we don't have yet, but that could, I think, make or break some of the service for people.
I mean, because
Right.
remember, they did. I think if Metal Gear was on here, they would have mentioned that before Death Stranding.
Well, not the new Metal Gears. I'm saying they're talking
No,
about,
any of them. I would have mentioned it.
but they were
Hell, I would
talking
have
about
mentioned.
PS4, PS5 games in that frame
I
of
would have
reference.
mentioned Metal Gear,
Well,
non-solid, Metal Gear Acid, one of the greatest games of all time on PSP. Not mentioned.
okay.
It's not. It's on PSP.
Given
but
that
it's
the only
not one of
games
the
they
greatest
mentioned
PSP
by
games. It's one of
name
the greatest all-time games.
were current gen / PS4 titles, I'm gonna say that that's why that's not there.
Phantom Pain.
But I'd also love to go back and replay the God of War series, replay the Uncharted series, do a lot of this stuff without having to go and actually buy them and get a console they work on, or it's just like, okay, they're on the subscription service. Cool. I can get to them when I want to. Whenever I want to do it, it's just right there.
Yeah.
They have a really good back catalog, and what they have that Xbox doesn't is that PS1 era stuff. Because Xbox wasn't around then. I mean, they have that PS1 era N64 competition that they had, and a lot of the games from that era are fantastic that I want to go back and see how badly they hold up.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those older games like that hold up horribly.
Wait, so they're not good? 'Cause you just said they're good games,
Well-
and now they're horrible. Make up
No.
your mind, and I think that's the big thing. Cliffy B said it. No one actually gives a shit about backwards compatibility. You keep saying you want it, but you never play those games because they're broken and they're full of jank, and no one makes open world games like GTA 3 anymore because they suck. Move on to the new goodies. Unless they're PSP games, then hell yeah, bring them on. This service is you're gonna get it because you're a PlayStation owner. This isn't like if you have both consoles. I think the best thing is gonna be is subscribe to one at a fucking time.
Yeah.
Whichever
Oh,
one
there's a
you're
new
using.
hot Xbox release. I got the Xbox this one. You know, just swap them because even with Xbox nowadays, it's not like there's a bunch of on Game Pass like a bunch of like games as a service games on there. You know.
Yeah.
And both services now, free games, or you don't need the Gold or PlayStation Plus to play online. So, like Fortnite, Apex Legends, a lot of those that people probably play online, you don't need to be actively subscribed to play those online with your friends.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
there's less and less need to actually be active on one of them. Unless you're playing very specific games of a service on one of them, which, you know, kind of your fault for being a nerd.
I think yeah, the Xbox definitely, like I said, has my money. That's the one I'm probably gonna pay for between the two. I kind of want to see how PlayStation stuff turns out. Like once it launches, what the selection of games is, and I don't know. I guess maybe even a question of like how often they rotate the games out. Is it going to be monthly? Is it going to be 2 months, 3 months? Like how often does the library of stuff that's offered rotate? Like that could be a deciding factor also. I think the stuff on Game Pass sticks around fairly long, or at least I feel like it's long, but at least long enough to play the games, yeah, and get through them. And I think one of the things I didn't mention that I think Ian might have brought up was that the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate comes with the cloud option. Like you can stream stuff to your phone, to a tablet, to any device with the Xbox Game Pass app, play things that way. They've recently started bringing that the cloud-based stuff to consoles. You can actually, there's certain games you can play, stream it from your console without taking up the hard drive space, which for me has actually been helpful for a few games I've tried, just because I don't want to put them on my console because the Series X is running out of hard drive space just to try to make room for shit. So being able to just pop into a game and stream it, which works fairly well for single player games that I've tried it with. I haven't tried it with multiplayer stuff, but for single player games, I think it works pretty good through a console, which I think is beneficial.
One I've tried is Wreckfest, and it worked fine, but that's also not a Twitch shooter or something.
Yeah,
it's,
right.
I think a little more forgiving, because even if it does fuck up, the whole point of Wreckfest is kind of to fuck up.
Yeah. There are crashes
But
involved.
I mean, for just like an example, like if you look right now at the PS Now games, which is gonna not exist when the service launches, you have Resident Evil 4 on there, Resident Evil Veronica X, Resident Evil Revelations. Like there's a lot of games presumably would make the transfer over, you would think,
Yeah,
right?
you would think.
Yeah, you would expect.
You know, Homefront. Remember Homefront?
And I think, for me personally, I've never used the cloud streaming, but I like the idea that that could be the future of how we're going to game because of how large game files are tending to get
Oh yeah.
in some of the bigger titles. And, like the developers are very well aware that in a lot of cases, this is a way to push people out is with the size of the game. Because, all of a sudden games start getting too big and then people have to buy another hard drive. And you're starting to not only push people out with, the size of the file not having space, or you're pricing them out where it's like, man, if I want to play this and not have to re-download shit, I have to go and get another hard drive to put it on.
Yeah.
And people don't want to do that. So the cloud gaming, if they can get it, functioning as close to a downloaded game as possible over the cloud so people can play competitively that way, that would be really cool. I don't think we're there yet. We're probably not there yet, but I haven't tried it myself, so I can't say. But I would assume we're not.
I have tried it on my phone here and there just to see how it works, and it seems like I think I tried Destiny on my phone a couple times just to see how it holds up, and it would load in very quickly. You'd start to be able to play it for a little bit, but after a while it just starts to lag, and then it never felt like it could catch up to itself. Granted, that was probably sometime last year when the last time I tried it on my phone. So I don't know if they've made improvements since then, but it's felt like a good starting point. I'm hoping it gets tighter and smoother, I guess, as we go, but
and that's also a phone is compared to something that has a better connection to the internet. A phone service is going to matter for that very much, but say you have a wired console,
yeah,
and you're able to go through your Ethernet and cloud game.
Yeah, because it was
How
very much
stable's
dependent on
that gonna
Wi-Fi
be?
and stuff at the time. So
Right, that's
depends
what I
on
mean.
the
Like
Wi-Fi
the speed
connection.
of the internet you're getting,
Yeah.
that makes it tough.
Part of the reason we were talking the last time we recorded, which is all part of the same episode, was Sony buying Bungie. Are we going to see Destiny and all Destiny content show up on this subscription service for PlayStation or no?
That's a really tough question. Because you would expect it, but the way Bungie operates with that kind of stuff, it's really tough to tell what the hell they're going to do next.
I mean, they had Beyond Light on Game Pass, and that
And they
left
took it
Game
off.
Pass, and now it's, now they're owned by Sony.
Right.
So
Yeah, I would assume we're going to see it there, but are we going to see all the content there? Or is it
Yeah.
going to be just like they did with Game Pass, where it's only the current year that is on Game Pass, and the past years with older content you still have to pay for?
I think the
That-
difference
that-
there was
that'll
they're not
be-
owned by Microsoft, so they still wanted that money. And now that they are owned by Sony, I think it's a possibility that you could
Right.
actually see all that stuff on Sony's console as,
Yeah,
as part of this
that's-
service.
That's a tricky question. I don't know what we'll see when we see on that one, I guess.
Yeah.
Sony's quality of games cannot be supported by being day-and-date releases on this new Game Pass service. That goes for Destiny, that goes for Horizon.
But as
There's
of right
God of
now,
War.
the Destiny stuff that's out is not day and date release. It's been released. So I'm like,
Right.
from Witch Queen back, you could see all of that stuff possibly on
Okay,
PlayStation.
it's been like a month. Cool your jets.
Well, it's
Well,
also
and
not
I
coming
think
out till
with
June.
this-
So
Stop
we
trying
got
to bankrupt Sony on your podcast. I won't stand for it.
Well, and I also think Destiny being a day and date release is more complicated because it's a game as a service kind of thing. Where like if you have all the old content available, but you can't get the new content through the thing, you get what I'm saying here. Like it's kind of a weird spot to put the game in because it's a game. It works as a service game, so I don't know what to expect from that because it's different than other. This isn't God of War where it's like you download the game, you play the game, and that's what's there, and it's never going to change.
yeah.
I mean, the stupid easy thing to do would just be make all of the content free and just make people pay for season passes and silver to buy cosmetics and shit. That would be the easy way to do it. It won't happen.
it'll be complicated.
also-
It'll be overcomplicated.
Well,
for no
I just don't
reason.
think it'll end up on the service.
You don't think you'll see any Destiny stuff on Sony's PlayStation service?
No.
Okay.
Like the free one that already exists, sure. I guess if we're gonna count.
Well, that's
the
free
one.
everywhere. So
That's what I'm saying. If we're gonna count that, sure. Outside of that, are they gonna give you any of the premium Destiny content bundled in as part of this service as one of those games? No.
see, I'm gonna say it will end up there at some point. I don't know how soon, but I definitely think
If Destiny 3 is announced, sure. Not a second sooner.
I'll say it'll end up there, but it'll be a strange, weird, convoluted system that doesn't make sense to anybody, that everybody has to ask for clarification for 1,000 times because it's too complicated to figure out when it could have been a lot easier.
I think
That would be
that's
my
already
anticipation.
I mean, I think
Exactly.
like that.
That's why I think that's what it'll be when it gets onto the Sony service.
I think Ian's suggestion makes more sense, which is probably why we won't see it. It's just put all the content on there, like you said, season passes and silver. You still have to pay extra for it. That makes sense to me. What I could see them doing is either one or the other. Either the most recent content will hit the service 6 months after it's released, and that would maybe be it, and then they still want you to buy all the backwards like content that's been out, or the reverse of that, and all the past content is free, but they still want you to pay for that latest and greatest, and you won't be able to get that on the service for a year until the next big batch of content comes out. I could see something like that happening too. But I also don't know if this is something we'll get an answer to when it comes out in June, or if, since Witch Queen came out in February, I don't know if we'll wait till if they'd wait as far as the fall of this year, presumably when another big batch of content comes out, or if they push that till February again. Basically, like a year, 9 months to a year from when Witch Queen came out. I could see them putting something, whatever, Witch Queen and prior on the service or something. But I guess we'll see.
That's been the new expansion comes out.
Right. So you make the latest and greatest have to pay for that.
The next expansion's called Lightfall, and it's going to be
Lightfall and these nuts.
And it's going to be probably also February, March next year. Like, that's their roadmap on the...
Well, it used to be November, right? They pushed Witch Queen because it got delayed. I didn't know if the other stuff was delayed, too.
It used to be the first week of September.
Okay.
So, like, Taken King, Rise of Iron, Destiny 2, and Forsaken all came out that first week of September.
Okay.
And then with Shadowkeep and Beyond Light, Shadowkeep got pushed to November... Or maybe Shadowkeep got pushed to October, and then Beyond Light got pushed to November. And then with COVID and everything and all that, with Shadowkeep being fully affected by that, or not Shadowkeep, Witch Queen, it got pushed back all the way into February.
Right, okay.
So they're just going to go with a full year cycle back to late winter, early spring.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I guess there's still a lot of wait and see details, I think, for this, but initial announcement, at least for PlayStation owners, you have something to look forward to and think about, I guess, come June, which tier you want to go for. See if there's anything appealing in any of these that, if you're like Mike, if you want all those back catalog games, it looks like you're looking for the premium tier, highest tier for that one. Is there any benefit to the middle tier? Would anyone get this just for the catalog of PS4 and PS5 games, just the newer stuff?
Well, and I feel like the final tier there is targeted towards some older gamers.
Yeah.
And that's why it's including those games there, is because we're the ones that will pay for them. We grew up with them. We're the ones, and we're also older now, and we make more money than the younger kids do because we have jobs and we're not 17 and worried about what PlayStation service we're going to use. It's like the one that has the old stuff, that one.
Because, I mean, the mid-tier PlayStation
they're thinking.
PlayStation Plus Extra is the most one that, like, the one that's comparable most to Xbox Game Pass. Price points are the same. You get your access to the PS4 and PS5 games, third-party PlayStation Studio stuff. Yeah, so I don't know.
I think, the thing that I'm hoping for Sony, and as somebody that will probably subscribe to this at some point to at least try it out, my hope is that they have been sitting back and taking notice and watching what Xbox was doing, learning from it, and learning how to make it better than it is. That's my hope. But
I mean, at the very least, I think for Sony, this is...
I don't know.
At the very least for Sony, I think this is a good starting point. Like, they're going to try it. I'm hoping they stick with it. I mean, Game Pass started rough when it started, too. There was not a lot on there when it started, and it's grown to what it is today, which I think is an excellent deal in a variety of games that are in there. So hopefully Sony will get there. Probably not at the start, but within a year, maybe 2, they can hit that spot.
Yeah, you're definitely right. At the beginning, Game Pass was not worth it, but it was also much cheaper. And like for a while, you could just add it basically for free. It was like $1.
They still do
And-
like occasionally. There's still those deals where you can sign up for the first month for $1, and then you're kind of in it.
But I mean, like when it first started, there was so little there. There was no first party like day and date stuff. It was so limited when it first started that it didn't seem that great.
Yeah.
And now I wish I had more time for it. That's all.
Ian, I know you're not a PlayStation player, so you probably have you're not gonna check this out at all.
I mean, I'm more likely to check out PS Now for the $10 a month to stream on my PC before they get rid of it than paying $18 to try and do the same thing later. Why wouldn't I just save the $10?
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna go through and go back and beat let's see, what's this say here? Oh, Nobunaga's 11th Kingdom.
Did you just pull that out of your ass, or like
It's on the list.
have you had your eye on that
Nobunaga.
game, or you just looked at a weird ass name and said I'm gonna play that?
Nobunaga is a very famous general in Japan, and it's kind of an in-joke amongst my friends, so I always look for Nobunaga and stuff, so that's...
I can't tell if you're full of shit or not. All right.
He was a general that was betrayed by his 2 lieutenants at a wall in this great battle. And there was recently an anime where he is great. You're supposed to cut me off by
Yeah, we're done. All right, that's it. That's where we're ending. This
I'm
is
like,
the end of the show.
What the fuck are you doing?
I kind of wanted to see
hole over there.
how long your bit was going to last because I wasn't sure how long you'd keep going, but all right. Yeah, so that's it for us. This is the little amendum. Thanks for sticking with us for this, to what we recorded before. So since this is going to be at the end of the episode, I'm going to wrap up like we normally do. As always, you can find us on Facebook. Search Bry Guy Super Friends or go to facebook.com/Bry Guy Super Friends. You can send us questions, comments, topic suggestions, any of that stuff here. Try to email us, bryguysuperfriends@gmail.com. It's valid. It works. I won't check it. Fill up the inbox. It's all there. Hit us up on Twitter @BGSuperFriends. Feel free to follow me on Twitch, Jedi Bry Guy. That's Jedi with an I, Bry with a Y. If I play some games or we go live and do a show there and record, it'll be done there. So follow and be ready. On behalf of Mike, Ian, and myself, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.